Now this brings us to St. Mark's in Venice. Now, Venice was able to stay independent from the various northern invaders primarily due to trade. The Silk Road will pass through Constantinople, but then its next major point is going to be Venice. They also have trade across the Mediterranean with North Africa and elsewhere, so they have enough power and influence to remain independent through the Middle Ages. Venice has close ties to the Byzantine East because it is an important trading post. Constantinople, after all, could cut off trade to Venice, so Venice has to be very close to Constantinople. And this, St. Mark's, is actually constructed to house the relics of St. Mark the Apostle. He'd preached in Venice and was killed in Egypt. Eventually, his body will be quote-unquote rescued from Muslim occupation and brought back to the city. And this is a relic, something that we'll get into probably in the next chapter or so. This is the third and the most grand church on the site, and it's completed sometime in about the 1200s. The exterior is actually a combination of Byzantine, Islamic, and Western Gothic motifs. Now, we haven't gotten to the Gothic or Islam, but you should be able to see some of those Byzantine ideas, the use of the domes. Those are also Islamic domes, those onion-shaped domes. We see the use of gold backgrounds, and we're seeing a lot of very interesting elements coming into play here. In terms of the layout, it starts out as a Greek cross. And it's a little hard to see because there have been expansions and changes that have taken place. But if you look at it basically as I'm drawing over it, you get a sense for that Greek cross, or the cross with 4 equal sides at the center of it. And then the rest of it, there are elements added on. Some of it is outbuildings. Some of it is just asymmetry that you see with a building that's close to 1,000 years old. So we see a Greek cross plan with a series of domes, the 5 major domes within that Greek cross. And then there are some smaller domes as well. The inside is lavishly decorated. And we see a cross between Western ideas and Byzantine ideas here. At first glance, this should look familiar as a Byzantine church. After all, the backgrounds are all gold, everything is mosaic. We see, for example, the Virgin Mary. We see an image in the apse back here of Christ enthroned, Christ in majesty. But if you start to look closer, what you'll notice is we're seeing narratives. So instead of simply people standing here, such as our Virgin Mary and angels that we see inside the central dome, we're seeing things like the crucifixion. On the other side, we're seeing risen Jesus speaking to his apostles. Here in the center, we're seeing the tomb, the finding of the empty tomb, where the angel stops the Marys, or whichever gospel you're reading, and tells them Jesus has risen. Now, this is very different from the Byzantine, because in the Byzantine, we rarely ever see the story. We often simply see Christ in majesty, the Pankarator, or we see the Virgin and Child, the Theotokos. So this is very, very different, sort of playing up these Western ideas and mixing them with Byzantine imagery to create this very complex grouping of images